Some of the most interesting and unusual ships in the Corellian Engineering Corporation's catalog are the YV series product line. This series of 12 light freighters are all very intriguing, so today we're not just going to take a look at every single one of them, but review and rate them on a scale of 1 to 10 as well. I'm Joey from Radio Free Coruscant, and this is the entire YV series. YV-100. Since we don't really know what order these were built in chronologically, we'll take a look at them in numerical order instead. That gives us a starting point of the YV-100. The YV-100 was released sometime before the rise of the Empire, likely at least a decade or two before the Clone Wars. It's implied to be the first YV series freighter, but unless it's already like 100 years old by the time of the Empire, I don't think that lore would have held up even in Legends, and certainly not in canon now that we have seen the YV-865 in the High Republic era. The YV-100 was inspired by and meant to capitalize on the popularity of CEC's better-known YT series freighter, though it completely failed to live up to the hype. It was well loved by pilots who bought one, but few did because it wasn't as easy to modify as the YT series freighters already on the market. The ship was 46.5 meters long by about 35 meters wide and 9.5 tall. It had a top speed of 880 kilometers per hour and a Class 3 hyperdrive. It was pretty well armed with 2 fire-linked front laser cannons and a really odd dual blaster cannon turret that couldn't shoot to the rear of the ship for some reason. It required a crew of 3 and could carry 150 tons of cargo, 6 months of consumables, and 10 passengers. The ship's price of 150,000 credits new or 50,000 used was not unreasonable, but given its lack of CEC's trademark modularity, it's no wonder most pilots thought CEC's other offerings were a better deal. I am not, and have never been, a huge fan of the YV-100. Its half-saucer main hull looks odd, and the huge engines on the sides make it too proportionally wide for my tastes. I had hoped that modeling the ship and getting to see it in 3D would be able to change my mind on it a little, as was the case on a couple of the other YV series ships, but I find myself no more impressed with it now than I was before. This isn't helped by the fact that this ended up being the lowest quality model of the bunch, I guess, but I don't think more details would have helped it much when I just don't like the shape. Lore-wise, it's not great either, when canonically it wasn't super popular, so sadly I think we have to start off with a low score for our first ship. I don't hate it by any means, but it is one of my least favorite ships of the bunch, so I think we will place it at 5 out of 10. YV-260. Now, the YV-260 is what I wish the YV-100 looked like. We know very little about it, but it apparently returned to CEC's tradition of being highly modifiable, and it was very popular with pirates and small militaries. The YV-260 measured 41.5 meters long by about 21 wide and 7 tall. It had a Class 1 hyperdrive and was armed with 2 blaster cannons, 2 twin ion cannon turrets, and a tractor beam projector. It had a crew of 2 and could carry a whopping 28 passengers, usually either prisoners, troops, or both. It could also hold 40 tons of cargo and 1 month of consumables. In the interest of both saving time with 12 ships to go over in this video, and fairness in ranking them, I am going to have to skip over the stats we don't officially know. Normally I try to fill in the holes in the stat block, but not today. I like the YV-260 a lot more than the 100. Its proportions make a lot more sense to me, and it has basically all of the design elements I liked from the 100, with none of what I didn't. The sort of metallic shading in its official illustration, combined with its streamlined rear hull and round engines, also give it a bit of a Naboo look as well, which is fun. I do have to question why it has less than 1/3 the cargo capacity of the 100 though, when it's not that much smaller. Clearly a lot of space has been put towards passenger capacity, but this is supposed to be a light freighter, not a shuttle. Despite this, it remains one of my favorites of the bunch, netting it a final score of 7 out of 10. YV-330. The first ship was the 100, the second ship was the 260, the third ship is the 330. I hope nothing unfortunate happens to disrupt this extremely satisfying pattern. The YV-330 is the first of many of these ships that we don't really know anything about. It was not as easy to customize as most CEC ships, but it could be purchased with various upgrade packages to make up for it. One such package could enhance its sensors, and it could be given extremely powerful weapons too. The only stat we know about it is that it was 26 meters long, from which we can derive that it also measured roughly 7 meters wide and 6.5 tall. So the YV-330 is kind of hard to rate because it looks really cool from some angles, but then you get around to the side and it just has this giant hole in it. Why is the huge 4-engine drive block attached by such a tiny strut? Why are we wasting so much room in the ship's outline on empty space here? Conceivably, you could hold an external cargo container there, but if that were the intention, I would think the strut would be on the top and the hole for the container would be on the bottom, so you could load it more easily. And then there's the problem of scale. At only 26 by 7 by 6, even without the big hole in it, there's almost no room for cargo. This should arguably be more of a personal transport than a light freighter. We don't know what its cargo capacity is supposed to be, but I wouldn't really believe any figure more than like 10 to 20 tons, hardly anything in the light freighter world. Between its tiny size and weird design, I don't think I can rate it very highly. I like the look of it better than the YV-100, but my complaints about it are more concrete and objective than those of the 100, so I think I'm going to rank it in the same place. 5 out of 10. YV-545. Ah, rats, they've messed it all up. And not just in numbering, but in design as well. What exactly is this YT series saucer ship doing in the YV series? These are almost all long, narrow, rectangular ships. What are we doing copying the YT series? We know basically nothing about the lore of the YV-545, other than that it was exceptionally maneuverable and popular with pirates and smugglers. It wasn't super popular in general, though, failing to reach the popularity of its predecessor, whatever that would have been. Part of that is due to the fact that consumers were put off by its B-wing style rotating cockpit that would allow the ship to fly and even land completely vertically with its body below the cockpit. Most thought that this was too complex, and I don't blame them. I can't imagine what kind of engineering miracle would be required to make a ship that can land in 2 different orientations. The YV-545's size was unknown. I scaled it to 39 meters long by 26 wide and 4.3 tall, but it might have been a bit bigger than that. It had a top atmospheric speed of 800 kilometers per hour and a Class 2 hyperdrive. It required 2 crew and could carry 5 passengers, 80 tons of cargo, and 3 months of consumables. The ship's weapons loadout isn't known either, but we can see at least 1 dual laser turret on its official illustration, and we can assume there to be a second one on the bottom. All of that cost just 120,000 credits new, or 35,000 used. Like the YV-330, the 545 is pretty hard to rank. I really like the look of it with the asymmetrical mandibles and forward-facing airlock. The giant sensor dish on the smaller mandible is really cool as well. However, we already had a product line for saucer-shaped ships like this, the YT series. There is absolutely no reason for this to be a YV instead of a YT. As you will soon see, it is not the only YV series ship with this issue, but it is by far the least justifiable. In a vacuum, I'd probably give it a 7 out of 10, but I have to dock it a point for being in the wrong product line, giving it a final score of 6. YV-560. Conveniently, all 4 of the incorrectly categorized saucer ships come right in a line, and the next one is the YV-560. This freighter was designed with exploration in mind, with a large number of extremely powerful sensors. It also had an exceptional onboard computer, numerous communication antennas, and compartmentalized cargo bays that could be individually sealed to contain and minimize damage. It measured 30.1 meters long by 22.4 meters wide and about 5.5 tall. It featured a Class 2 hyperdrive and at least one twin medium laser cannon. It required 2 crew and could carry 5 passengers, 40 tons of cargo, and 8 months of consumables. I would have expected more in that last department considering it's for exploration, but whatever. The ship cost 120,000 credits. Now, I really like the YV-560. It looks awesome with all those sensors and things on the front, and the concept of it is just cool. But there is absolutely no reason it shouldn't be a YT series ship. It does not belong in the YV series. At least the 545 had a slightly different hull style, but the one on the 560 is virtually identical to the YT-1300 and several others in that line. Based on its looks, I want to give it an 8, but like the 545, I really have to deduct points for being in the wrong line. And just 1 point isn't enough this time. Considering how much it looks like the YT-1300 and 2000, I have to take off 1.5. That still leaves it ahead of the YV-545, with a score of 6.5 out of 10. YV-580. The second newest member of the YV series, introduced in 2019, is the YV-580. Sadly, we know absolutely nothing about it, other than that bounty hunter Baylert Valance used one named the Broken Wing while trying to hunt Darth Vader. It appears to be armed with 4 laser cannons and occasionally 2 dual laser turrets, and based on the airlocks I have scaled it to be about 45 meters long by 36 meters wide and 5 meters tall. While this ship did feature a YT-style saucer section, I'm not going to deduct any points for that this time because its long rectangular catamaran hulls do look like they belong in the YV line. What I am going to deduct points for, though, is the difficulty in replicating its design in 3D. There appear to be 2 entirely different interpretations of the design in the comics, one with longer arms, round engines, and less details, and a more detailed one with far shorter arms and more rectangular engines. Plus, the images I've seen of them aren't exactly consistent in either version. I assume one is from the Target Vader comic run and the other is from Bounty Hunters, but regardless, it made it hard to decide what it should look like. I ended up going with sort of a blend between the two. That being said, I really like the look of the YV-580. The twin hulls are awesome and make me think it could be some kind of crane ship like the AT Hauler from Solo. The overall look is quite cool for a comic ship, and while I'm not sure the YV series is the right place for it, I think it's still plausible. If its appearance were consistent, I'd give it an 8, but as is, I think a 7 out of 10 is fair. YV-664. And the final saucer ship in the YV series line is the YV-664. Like the 580, we know nothing about it, but we can see that it has at least 1 and likely 2 dual laser cannons, and based on the cockpit we can scale it to around 34 by 24 by 7 meters. It also has 4 large tanks at the front of the saucer, and what I believe to be 2 tubes with ports in the mandibles, leaving me to believe this is some kind of light tanker ship. While it has very much a YT-style hull and cockpit, I think it potentially being a tanker is enough of a justification for it not being in the YT series, and instead being in the YV series with the other oddballs. Doesn't match aesthetically, but I can live with that in this case. As for a score, I think another 7 seems fair to me. YV-666. Back to the normal rectangular ships, my score for the YV-666 might be a controversial one. The YV-666 was a very long, narrow, and tall ship most famous for its use by bounty hunter Bosk. It was 47.4 meters long by 36.9 wide and 15.5 tall. It had a top speed of 1,190 kilometers per hour and a Class 3 hyperdrive. It was armed with a quad laser cannon and a twin light laser cannon. The ship needed a crew of 2 and could carry 6 passengers and 3 months of consumables, though its cargo capacity was unknown. It cost 132,000 credits. I have never been a big fan of the YV-666. First of all, the devilish 666 moniker seems a bit childishly edgy, like it was concocted by a 14-year-old who wanted to signify how cool and intimidating he thought Bossk was. More importantly though, I just don't like its design. It's so tall and narrow that it looks like a light breeze could knock it over, and it would be incredibly inconvenient to fill with cargo. The cutout section at the back with the wings and engines looks very awkward, and its enormous Gothic cockpit window is no better. And speaking of its wings, they rotate up for landing on the wrong axis. Instead of folding up and out of the way like on most shuttles, they rotate along their length, so the ship still requires the same width of landing space. You can't even justify its weird width by packing a bunch of them in a tight space like sardines, because the wings still get in the way. It's not terrible in any way, and I do like it a little more now having made my own model of it, but it's still not my favorite. I'm not sure I would say it's any more awkward looking than the YV-100, but it's in a similar zone for me and will receive the same score of 5 out of 10. A perfectly adequate but somewhat homely ship. YV-865. The only one of these ships to have a subtitle, the YV-865 Aurore-class freighter, is one of my favorites in this collection. It is also one of the oldest members of the lineup, dating back to at least 232 BBY. And you can kind of see its age in its appearance with a very simple design and most examples of it being covered in rust. At some point, the ship caught the attention of the Zygerians, who purchased so many of them that the 865 eventually came to be known as the Zygerian slave ship. The YV-865 measured 52.3 meters long by 42.3 wide and 16.4 tall. It had a top speed of 900 kilometers per hour and a Class 1 hyperdrive, quite impressive for its size, role, and age. It was armed with a twin medium laser cannon, though that appeared to be optional, as well as a grappling turret. The ship required a baffling crew of 10, with a pilot, co-pilot, comms operator, 2 loadmasters, and 4 gunners, though it could seemingly be flown by just one easily. It could carry 15 normal passengers, and for the Zygerians, 100 prisoners as well. It could also carry 2 months of consumables and an unknown amount of cargo. The YV-865 is one of my favorite ships in the line, with its cool angular shape and wide variety of variants. This was actually one of the first ship models I made for my channel, if that tells you anything. I think it was maybe the 4th one that I started, and the 1st or 2nd to actually make it into a video. That being said, I don't know that I would rate it that highly in the grand scheme of things. I think I like it more than the ones I've rated a 7, but not enough to warrant an 8, landing it at a final score of 7.5. YV-888. The YV-888 is the first of 2 ships on this list that we don't actually have an official image of. We also know essentially nothing about it as well. So rather than skipping it entirely, I decided to make my own interpretation of it from scratch. The only description given of the 888 is that it was similar to the YV-666. Given the similar names of the 2 freighters, I took that to mean it was meant to replace it. So I took my model of the 666 and updated it to sort of what I think it would look like if it were to appear in a live-action project someday. I de-exaggerated its proportions, making it slightly shorter and thicker. I added an airlock on the front since the 666 was missing them entirely, and the live-action 865 has one there. I also made the wings flatter and more practical, and added 2 engines to them to justify the direction the wings rotate. I've always thought the 666 reminded me of a semi-truck, but its engines being on the back the way they are would mean it couldn't really tow anything like that. Putting engines on the wings for the 888 allowed me to remove 2 of the engines, clearing some space for it to hold a huge external cargo container like a flatbed truck. I did keep one of the central engines though, because I think it's essential to the look of the ship, but I moved it up a bit to maximize the height of the container. Finally, I gave it a simpler and more conventional cockpit window. Unfortunately though, as happy as I am with how it turned out, it would not be fair of me to rank a ship that I almost entirely had to design from scratch. I'd love to give my design an 8, but the YV-888 itself simply can't be ranked at all with nothing to go off of. YV-929. The penultimate ship in the YV series, the YV-929 Armed Freighter, is probably the most famous of these ships besides perhaps the YV-666. It was designed to be extremely heavily armed to defend against pirates and rebels, though those ended up being its primary customers. It was tiny, ugly, and expensive, but ended up being one of the most popular YV series ships. It suffered from the same small size as the YV-330, wherein it seems too small to be practical, but unlike the 330, it was more than wide enough to contain some actual cargo space. It measured 22 meters long by around 15 meters wide and 6.7 tall. It had a top speed of 1,000 kilometers per hour and a Class II hyperdrive. It was insanely heavily armed with 2 double turbo lasers, 2 ion cannons, 2 triple blasters, and 4 concussion missile launchers, far more than any ship I've seen of this size. It required 1 pilot and just 3 gunners, and could carry 6 passengers, 150 tons of cargo, and 3 months of consumables. All of that came at a fairly steep cost of 250,000 credits new or 100,000 used. There was also a version of the ship that did not include the turbo lasers that bafflingly cost 130,000 credits more than the basic 929, despite seemingly not having any advantages over it. I used to hate the Flying Brick for its ugly appearance and ridiculously overkill weapons loadout, but after making a model of it for a video some time ago and getting to study it in 3D, I'm actually quite fond of it now. I think it would be fair to give it an 8, but I kind of think it's too famous for that. I docked points on a couple ships for not feeling like they belong in the YV series, so it's only right that I should award an extra point for the one that basically defines the line. Plus, it's got 2 of them in its name, so you know I have to give it a 9. YV-969. And finally, the last and newest YV series freighter is the YV-969. Unfortunately, this is another one we know nothing about and have no image of. Its description says it redeemed the reputation of the YV series after it was tarnished by the 865's association with the Zygerians. For this reason, I have chosen to represent it with a model of the live-action interpretation of the YV-865 seen in Andor Season 2. Unlike the live-action versions of ships like the VCX-100 or the Gozanti, the design of the YV-865 was completely changed. While the Andor interpretation is a lot closer to the original animated 865 than the one seen in The Rise of Skywalker, it still looks like a completely new ship design. But that's perfect for a ship that's kind of implied to be a replacement for the 865, so that's what I've used it for here. Unfortunately though, while I really like this design, and unlike the 888, it is a canon design, it isn't the design of the 969, and thus the 969 must be disqualified as well. Kind of an anticlimactic ranking for the last ship on the list, but oh well. And that's every single YV series freighter. If you liked the review format, please let me know in the comments which ship was your favorite and what ship family you'd like to see reviewed in a future video. This video was a tremendous amount of work to make, as I made every single one of the ship models seen in it, so I'm going to need this video to do super well to be able to justify making another one like it. If you want that to happen, leave a comment, like the video, subscribe if you aren't already, and most importantly, share it with a friend who might like it as well so the YouTube algorithm pushes it to even more people. YouTube also has a new feature where you can hype new videos by small creators like myself. I don't know what that does or how you do it, but if you're watching this within a week of its release, give it a try and we'll see if it does anything. But enough about a potential sequel. Thank you so much for watching this one. It was very fun to make all these ships despite how much work it was, so I'm very grateful to anyone who's made it this far. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next week. RFC, out.